Kia ora everybody, welcome along to the League and Order show. A busy old show to talk about. We've got NRL with the Warriors destroying Tony Kemp's Knights. The Parramatta Eels who have disappeared off the face of this planet and looking like they're going to renege on some of the players that they've loaned us. And of course, another Tony Kemp option, trying to pull down New Zealand Rugby League. Let's not dilly-dally any longer. Let's get into it. Here we have it. The cast today in the lineup. Blake Ayshford. Aishy, you well?
I'm well, Marcus. New shirt, four-shot coffee this morning, ready to roll.
I like it.
And taking up all the screen, mate. Move over.
He's gained some weight. He's gained some weight in the arms. He's been doing some lifting. Tony Kemp. Tony, fresh off your post on Facebook, which seems to have stirred up a lot of people, and we can get into that. You well?
Yeah, look, I thought the post would throw the light on some issues that we have in the country, not a blowtorch and blowing up like bigger than Guy Fawkes, So it needed to be said, Mark, and I articulated an open letter to the New Zealand Rugby League, basically what people around the country were thinking. My phone's been going red hot ever since.
Yeah, I heard you yelling at somebody outside the door, but we can get into that. We can get into that shortly. And Lavina Good joins us out of the Mount, or is it Tauranga? I can never remember which one.
Tauranga, mate. And after a week where Parramatta were convincingly defeated, there's only one way to get over that, and that's with an impressive Warriors victory.
I thought you were going to say with a case of wine.
Yeah.
That case of wine we won was good, Lavina. It was good.
Yeah, we did well.
Okay, let's start with the Warriors destroying the Knights. Now, of course, it was a game that we all thought they could win. We felt like we could do it, and it was one of those games where they actually did do it, and it was foot on the throat stuff. And I remember messaging you that, Kempy, because that was something you had said lacks in the Warriors, is the idea that you've got a lead, now you put your foot on the throat and just keep on scoring and scoring. Your take on it?
Yeah, look, the resilience that they've shown over the last, I guess, 6 months to get to a position. Just let's put it in a context. The Bulldogs the week before, where they were struggling at half time, and they get over the top of a team at the bottom of the table, but then they go up against the Knights in the top six and absolutely destroy them. I think showed the New Zealand public what this team can do, given the fact that they're in this, I think, a tournament-style competition and only getting better week in, week out. A mate of mine texted me yesterday and said, do you think they can make the 8? I said, mate, dead set, think they can make the 8. I think they can win the next 4 games. I think Parramatta are right for the taking this week. And I think if they continue... Look, a comment that Blake made a couple of weeks ago about asking one of the young fellas what Todd Payton has done to bring a change to this Warriors side, and what Ace said was he changed up a little bit of the defensive structures. And anyone that's played in the NRL knows that if you get your defence right, the attack will follow. It's mainly where the game is won and lost, is if your attitude towards defence and getting stuck in and your chase back and your middle working really tough and your insides closing off plays and pulling off really critical tackles at critical times gives you the confidence to go out there and attack. And I was watching the game on the weekend against Newcastle and just thought at half time, man, how are Newcastle still in the game? They're playing garbage. They're dropping the ball every set of 6. And the Warriors just, their resilience, they just went, we'll just stick to the team plan and we're going to get them in the end. And those, Mitchell Pearce became our best player, couldn't make a tackle. And Roger, Jez Tavaga, the boys that have really been stumping up week in, week out, got the lollies. So, mate, I take my hat off to them. Can they make the 8? Dead set, they can make the 8.
Keep saying that over and over again. Lavina, your thoughts on the Warriors? Must have just...
There were three facets that stood out for me. The offloads from Hiku just made a mockery of the left edge defence, which was fantastic. I just thought he created so many opportunities, and as they're about to take on Parramatta, who lost 38-0, and their edge defence is not good, I hope that the Warriors go, that's a real attacking ploy for us. The fact that we can offload without looking and really ask questions of the opposition. Tuivasa-Sheck standing out, Mitchell Pearce, the golden boy, it gave me so much joy on the back of an attitude of defence from the Warriors, because the Warriors' defence was so good structurally and also making the tackles. It allowed someone like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck to make a mockery of one of the greatest players in the game at the moment. And the third point was I could just see at the end of the game a real beautiful cutaway shot of Gus Gould having his awful tail stick in between his legs and sit down on it and hear me say, Gus, a couple of weeks ago, I I said you're a dickhead for saying the Warriors were only going to win 4 games. Guess what, Gus? You're still a dickhead, mate. And every time we win a game, Gus, you're a dickhead. Makes me feel good.
Aish, you would have been chuffed with the lads.
Mate, I was happy. I dug into half a case of beer after the win. I was so happy. Mate, just 2 words, tough and controlled. And what I mean by that is, we spoke about resilience. They were awesome. Like, a team can come out and play bad, but you've still got to perform as well. And Kemp said they went and stuck to their game plan. And what I mean by controlled is those halves stepped up in a way that I can't remember the last time the Warriors got 6 repeat sets. Like, but that's unheard of. You know what I mean? And the way they controlled that game, the Knights were playing bad, but we kept the foot on the throat by applying that pressure, repeat sets, getting the ball back, and then putting on some good plays. I was impressed by Hayes Perham. I messaged him after the game. I said, that's the best game he's played in first grade. He's only played 6 games, but I really thought that he showed glimpses of what I know he can do. And I just want to say to the Warriors recruitment, if you don't sign Peter Hiku, you're kidding yourselves.
Look,
because
I think that's a whole conversation in itself around Ken Mamalo, Dave Fusitua, Peter Hiku, Hayes Perham, whether or not those outside backs are going to keep him, given the context of Georgie Jennings coming into the side and doing such a good job, you know what I mean? Salary cap wise, what are you going to do when you've got 2 highly paid wingmen sitting it out at home, and you got Georgie Jennings coming in? What do you reckon he's getting? 50 grand to come in? You know what I mean? It's going to mean massive for your salary cap and your potential players that you can address to the side next year, whether or not they sign Peter. They look at Fuss and they look at Kenny to see whether or not they want them still in the side come 2021.
Oh, mate, I think they will have them both in the side. I know George is there, but I'm pretty sure he's still with Parramatta. But I just think that they're good enough when on, and if the comp is, if they're in that team and they're fit, we need them.
I'll tell you what, Ace, they're going to play in Aussie next year.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
The COVID experience is going to extend for another 12 months. And it's only logical to think that they're already planning to stay in Australia at Redcliffe next year. So what does that mean? They've already played their cards, Dave. What I'm saying is Dave and Kenny have already played their cards. What does that mean to your recruitment strategy?
They haven't. If you think about it, this year, we've already spoke about how they tried to get their family over and they couldn't. We don't know if next year's going to be different. So they could get their family over, their family could live over there with them, and they could play. So in my opinion, if it is over there and they can get their family over, they'll play. I think it was just that they were missing family this year. But the main thing that I wanted to say was Peter Hiku needs to be signed, because you go out and sign Ewan Aiken, I don't know what he got, but Peter Hiku is a genuine centre. And what I mean by that is for years...
He got Katoni stagged, that's what he did.
Yeah, but what I mean is for years you've had, the last, say, 5 to 10 years, the genuine centre's gone out of the game. You've got back rowers playing in the centres, you've got fill-in people who look like centres playing there. Peter Hiku is a genuine footballer.
Yeah,
and
100%.
If you want to go forward with this team, we need him in there. So
what are you saying? Are you hearing that they're not going to sign him?
Well, he hasn't been signed yet, mate. I don't see why he hasn't. There might be talks going on. I don't know. The last time I spoke to him about 4 weeks ago, he was still unsigned.
I can't believe that they signed Ewan Aiken before Peter Hiku.
This is what I'm saying, and that's why my plea right now to anyone listening: please petition something. Peter Hiku needs to stay at the Warriors.
Do you want me to pen an open letter?
Open letter, mate.
There's a new coach coming in that wants to sign Ewan Aiken. It's through the new recruitment policy that's happening. Yeah, that's why that's happening, I think. And I agree with Peter. I thought he was outstanding, and the opportunities he created really helped the Warriors on the back of the fact that the Warriors made the tackles. It's the defence that wins games, and that's what they were doing.
I had this conversation with you before, Aish, and it goes along the lines of Peter Hiku can sometimes make just basic errors. Like, there are some times where he just drops the ball cold where you're like, what is that? However, in the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, just like everyone in the team for some reason, they've stepped up their game and they've become world beaters and they've looked really, really good. And saying that, pumped by the Sharks in round 10, pushed the Roosters in round 11, beat the Tigers and Manly narrowly lost to Penrith, beat the Doggies and then thrashed the Knights. Like, this team has turned it around, and now Peter Hiku definitely looks like someone we cannot go without, and the same with the coach. All of a sudden, how good does this coach look that's about to say, by the way, I'm no longer playing. I'm not going to be coaching the Warriors. Where I'm now the Cowboys head coach. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is where we're like, oh no, we had everything we needed, and now we're letting it go. Or what will happen next season? Will we be looking at Peter Hiku making some basic errors and spending a lot of money making sure we secure him because something's changed?
With the coach, we brought this point up about Stephen Kearney when he got sacked. I know we moved on from that, but everyone's saying Todd Payton 5-5.
Yep.
Kearney was 2-2 since the resumption of play. So to me, we don't know what could have happened, and I'll give full praise to Toddy. I reckon Toddy's got the boys to really dig in a time when a lot of other teams and a lot of other people haven't or wouldn't. So I don't know about what the new coach will bring to Peter Hiku. I just know that he's a genuine footballer, and there's not many people can do what he can do. He's
a synovial joint. Like, he's been made to put in a whole lot of different positions, right, throughout this season. Even for his whole career with the Warriors, he's been playing fullback.
It's really hard to sign a really good centre, let alone a Kiwi centre, to play at NRL level. They let go Solomon Cutter, they let go Conrad Harrell. They've had Brent Tate there from Australia. I just think they got rocks in their head if they let Peter Hiku go, because who do they replace him with? And we've seen what Katoni Staggs did to Urinaiken in that recent game when Brisbane played St George. So, Peter Hiku deserves to be signed up for at least another year or two because of the calibre. He's a current Kiwi centre too. Let's not forget that. But just going on this coaching thing, and I've got asked the same question this week around Todd Payton's writing his own cheque. Well, he needs a new manager if he only signed for 1.5 up at the Cowboys. He'd be one of the lowest paid people up there, I reckon. But he's obviously moved on, and Stephen, like what Ace is saying, probably could deserve the accolades for getting the team prepared for the year. But I just reckon if the coach gets the accolades, mate, you heap him on him, because I tell you what, if he was doing shit, he would have been copping it. You know what I mean? They'll be saying, get out now. What are you here for? They quickly turn the coin over, and I just think that Payton deserves everything that he's getting at the moment. He has turned them around.
Yep.
He has got the attitude right. He's worked in the tournament-style facility to get them fit. You know what I mean? A guy said to me, they're just fit, mate. I went, shit. They are. They're fit. People expect them to fall off the bandwagon 20 minutes to go. You just know now that they're not going to fall over. They're going to compete for the 80 minutes.
They're fit, and they're mentally strong as well.
They're resilient. So he deserves a lot of praise for that. And it's unfortunate that he's leaving. And the $1 million question is, can Nathan Brand carry it on? That's what we all wait to see.
Yeah. And can I just move forward? That was the past. The future is this week. And we get to play the Eels, who, might I add, are a pack.
They win.
They're a pack of dicks.
Get on there,
because they've decided, and I know that this was well in the past.
You're going to offer a bottle of wine up, Lavina, because I'm going to say I'm in.
Daniel
Alvaro. That's actually how you guys take a bet. You don't offer something and then after the game go, I'm in.
That's what I do.
I made some money on the Warriors, so I don't mind making some money. Again this weekend. I just don't know the Parramatta real deal thing. I said to you guys last week, I've been questioning Parramatta. I've been thinking they're not the real deal. Then they keep Melbourne Storm to 0 with a 14-0 victory, and then get absolutely pummeled. Looked like they were disinterested. In fact, half the team looked anonymous to me. Half the team in the second half, I'm like, did you even play in the first half?
I can answer it for you, Lavina. They're not the real deal. They're not the real deal.
They tapped out. It's a great opportunity for the Warriors to prove that, they can beat a top 8 team for the first time this year, was to beat the Knights, their first top 8 victory. But they did come close against the Roosters and also against the Panthers. And if they really want to continue along the merry way, I think the Warriors aren't just fit at the moment, and they're not just obviously feeling settled because, the players that have left have already left and their captain isn't saying they're leaving anymore and they know that they've got a new coach, so that's settled. But the fact that they've been in this unit together for such a long time, so they're cooking together, they're socialising together, they're training together twice as hard as what they would at home. And I think for those players, like you talk about Peter Hiku and him wanting to re-sign, Blake, you would know this better than anyone, but he's a really popular member of that Warriors fraternity. He carries so much mana and so much respect. So you don't just need to re-sign him because he's setting up all the tries on the right edge at the moment, because he fits within the realm of what the Warriors need to be a good team, which is playing for each other. And that's the way they're playing at the moment. So I just think if they've got an opportunity to keep proving themselves, that they can do it against Parramatta this weekend. But once bitten, twice shy for the Eels. I don't think that they're going to turn out like what they did against the Bunnies, because I'd be very, very surprised if they did.
No, well, that's simply on the backs that they're being dicks, the Eels, and have decided Alvaro and Jennings are to be banned from facing their club this weekend.
Cut it out. Don't wear hard on your sleeve.
Well, let's be honest. The lone players, and this reminds me, it takes me back to my childhood when you were playing Lego and your older brother used to grab a whole lot of the Lego bits and hold them. And I'm like, but you're not even using those. And he goes, it doesn't matter.
Eels want them back, mate. The Eels want them
back. How do we go with this lone player scheme and knowing that two pretty important pieces who've been playing bloody well for our Warriors aren't allowed to play this weekend?
Can I make a point?
Apparently they want to stay with the Warriors as well.
Can I make a point on this? Is that it's been so hard to sign players in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it does make an argument to take the team to Aussie and base them in Aussie.
Well, not really. These are fringe players for
the
organisation.
But base them in Aussie and play your home games in New Zealand.
Right.
You know what I mean? So fly into New Zealand for the weekend and play your home games in New Zealand at Mount Smart, but fly back out. Because look at how many loan players and how easy it was for them to get loan players. If you're thinking about signing marquee players and Australian players to the Warriors based in Australia, how much easier is it going to be? How much better is this side going to be?
That's a very, very good point. It'd be hard for us to swallow as Kiwis, though, to sit there and think our team's based in Australia and they just fly back to visit us. Like, that to us is a horrid feeling. I like the idea of them being based here, but you do bring up a valid point.
You wouldn't be at the airport when they bring that trophy back?
Yes, I would be.
You would be, mate.
If it means we win a trophy, I can change my way of thinking.
There's a lot more to that than just being based in Australia. You got to think about, now they're in lockdown over there. What happens when you get free reign? You've got like nightclubs, you've got beaches, you've got media.
What are you saying? Auckland's a new Gold Coast.
You got Mitchell Pearce.
What's wrong with the Gold Coast? Are you saying there's too many nightclubs?
I'm just saying.
Aish, you're being very revealing about your personality type here.
How many times did you turn the Gold Coast down?
Okay, well, let's talk about a team, because this is how I can find a great link to it. So we have Parramatta Eels, who all of a sudden will need these players, no doubt. We'll probably end up losing these lone players. But then on the other side of the coin, a couple of really good-looking players and have played league for a long time, looking to be cleared out of the Tigers roster as Madge Maguire decides that, hey, we need to start looking to the future now. One being Benji Marshall. Is there a bit of synergy here? Could we be going, hey, we're in the market for a couple of loan players, instead of just putting them down into reserve grade or having them around the club rooms doing nothing? Why don't we throw them over to the Warriors for the next 4 weeks? Because we've got 4 weeks left. I mean, we could use these players.
You take Benji, is that what you're saying?
Oh, I'll take Benji. If you're going to loan him.
You don't want Benji. Don't be silly. He's 35 years of age. His best rugby league is behind him. We don't want Benji, and we don't, in fact, need Benji. And I kind of get the fact that the Tigers are going, we don't have enough money in our salary cap to have 4 players in the halves. It just doesn't work that way. I know they've been trying to get rid of Reynolds and Brooks and Mbai, their captain, that they're not even trying to hang on to at the moment. So Benji's way down the bottom of that list because, I know he's got a good head on him and I know that he can honestly be a leader out there on the paddock. But when it comes to spending $300,000 to $400,000 on your salary cap, they're chasing Charlie Staines and Josh Adokar. When you're thinking about the money in the back line that they could invest, then I get why they're saying to Benji, we probably don't have room for you. And I think we've learned our lesson also buying halves that might have had their best days before them. I totally agree with what Ace said about the Warriors halves pairing. It was so good to see Harris Tavita take control of that game with the kicking game. He didn't try and be a superior player. He played percentage rugby league and just wanted the ball back every time. So his kicking was on song, pinpoint accuracy, which meant the Warriors had the opportunity to continue to put pressure on a side that was laden with stars, and that's where their points came from. So I don't think we need Benji, and I really understand the Tigers saying at 35 years of age, mate, if you're trying to get another season for another $300,000 so that you can continue on your merry way in rugby league, it doesn't work by that. You live by the sword and you die by the sword in the game. And if you're not good enough, you've got to say goodbye with your head held high.
A couple of things.
Your Honour.
Look out. This is the West Tigers coming out of here.
Yeah, well, Benji's probably, you named those 4 halves, Benji gets the least amount of money out of those 4 and probably plays better footy than those 4.
Second in try assist in the comp.
Better than those 4. To think that you wouldn't pay another $300,000 for a half when you've got your other halves earning $1 million or whatever that is, to go and then buy 2 wingers Like it just doesn't weigh up. Like you want to pay a kid. Charlie Staines wants 300, 400,000 because he scored 6 tries in 2 games. But he's playing on a team that's coming first to create tries for him. Like he's going to go to the Tigers on 400,000 and we don't know what. Like he's played 2 games of NRL and you want to offer him
well, the sun shines.
This is a mistake that the Tigers have done before by paying people. Obviously, as we've seen in their halves. I would not take Benji at the Warriors because, like you said, our halves are young. I think we can develop them. But to say that he's times up the Tigers and just brush him aside when you got those other 3 players earning a lot more, I just think he's done too much for the club.
For the game.
For the game, for New Zealand.
He left the game for the Blues.
Yeah,
what are you
but there was
about?
there was a lot behind the scenes that there was a lot, but he could have earned a lot more in rugby league. There was a lot more behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know, and for him, I think he's done a lot for the game. He's done a lot for the West Tigers
100%.
to just being shown the door like this. And if he wants to play on, give him 300,000, 1 more year. And the worst thing that could happen.
$300,000.
The worst
Benji
thing.
Marshall, Josh Addo-Carr.
Come
on
Josh
now.
So is Josh Addo-Carr better than Nofaluma? I don't think so, in my opinion.
He's a fullback, mate.
yeah.
He's trying to get $1 million.
Yeah, exactly.
He's trying to get $1 million.
Adam Dewey's but fast. But Adam Dewey's doing a great job at fullback for the Tigers.
He is. I actually wouldn't sign Addo-Carr personally. I think there's. I'm going to take it down a different road here. There's a couple of things.
You're not my recruitment officer, Tony.
Yeah, look, I think Addo-Carr again. He's on the back of the Melbourne line is why he's so good. You know, going to another club ain't going to mean you're going to get the same from Addo-Carr. That's been proven. Time and time again, but I'm just going to take the walker down a different road here. I think the first thing that's really interesting is that Madge Maguire's sacking of players week in, week out hasn't worked. You know what I mean? So I remember walking into the change room every Tuesday and seeing if your name was on the first grade list, and they used to drive fair through the playing group to make sure they performed. It obviously hasn't worked at the Tigers. You know what I mean? So Maguire needs to step up and say, hey, I was stuffed up this year. I think putting the blame on his playing group is an easy cop-out. That's the first thing. And I think the second thing, when you're talking about Benji Marshall, all right? Now, whether he leaves or not, have a parade for Benji Marshall. He has been the West Tigers for the last 15 years. So have a parade for him, whether he goes or whether he stays. Have a parade for him and say thank you very much to that bloke. Yeah. You know what I mean? I want to say thank you to Benji for what he's done for New Zealand Rugby League, for our kids, for just the mana that he's brought to our sport. You know, he's been as big as Sonny Bill Williams. He's played at the highest level and represented our country, and he could have easily done that at State of Origin Australian side because they would have picked him. But the main point I want to make is you're missing the point here, West Tigers. Sign him to $100,000 a year and keep him at the club for 10 years.
As an ambassador
to market the club for the kids to bring them through to want to be Benji Marshall over the next 10 seasons.
Totally.
He potentially could be your marketing manager, and people in the press are saying we don't want him. What a load of crap.
And that's where
you know what I mean. Think a little bit laterally, fellas. You're going to let go one of the biggest marketing tools you've got at that club for the last 15 years.
And I think he will go into coaching after he retires, whether it be just coaching the halves or helping out where he can. I was at a camp with him this year, and he took on at a New Zealand Rugby League camp, and he was with all the young kids of New Zealand, and you could see their faces light up when he was coming and talking about the game and teaching them little nicks about the game, all the basics. So I think you're right there. I think they do need to sign him, and even if it is not 300,000, then totally agree. Sign him for a longer deal.
Look at you.
Sign him for a longer deal, and with a coaching incentive.
You just agreed to a deal taking 200K off your own deal that you put forward first.
Because Kemp,
100K.
That was a great rebuttal by Kemp. That was awesome.
I'll tell you what, they've done the same thing with Sammy Burgess.
Yes.
You know what I mean? No one's ever picked that up. Sammy Burgess retired because he had a knackered shoulder and everyone thought he was going to go back to England. South Sydney showed, and I bet you it was Russell Crowe, said, hang on, this guy means a lot to this club and can drive us through the next 5 or 6 years. Let's give him $300,000. Let's not give him $1.5 million a year. Let's give him $300,000 over the next 5 to 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, it makes a hell of a lot of sense in Benji Marshall's case that he steps off the football field into the club. doesn't it? It does. Right from your junior structures to your coaching structures to your marketing structures and that, you know. You need a smart CEO to say
One of
that
my
to Benji.
finest moments of Benji Marshall wasn't the goose step or the 2005 grand final. I lost a lot of respect for him when he turned his back on my game. It actually takes me a lot to forgive players that turn to the dark side. Then they return and then they play for the Dragons for a good contract. But came home to the club that made him. But, I mean, he's absolutely heralded here in the Bay of Plenty as a former touch footballer in Whakatane. And there's so many young rugby league players here that still hold him in high esteem and up on that pedestal. I was probably hoping for a contribution to New Zealand Rugby League more from Benji Marshall than when he captained the side this year and shed a tear. And that was a very special moment for me. I probably thought that at that stage, Benji, when you thought I'd come to New Zealand and play rugby, I was really hoping you'd come to New Zealand and help develop the game of rugby league here, be it through the Warriors or New Zealand Rugby League, or as you head towards your retirement, you can go to the country that, you know, helped make you a rugby league player in the first place and give back to the sport here. And I understand why that didn't work out for Benji Marshall, but I probably don't hold him as high a regard as you guys do, because he turned his back on the game and he chased the dollar at one stage when he came back into the game. And I really think that New Zealand Rugby League needs players like Benji Marshall here in this country to help it evolve.
I think from a person who has enough room in their head and space in their heart to love both games, that's probably why I don't mind what Benji did in that stage. But I think we can all agree on this point. If Madge was to just clear him off the roster and that was the last we heard of the great Benji Marshall in all our lives, that would be an awful shame.
And I just want to, you know, I'm going to have to say something here, Lavina, about Benji. Now, he was pushed out of that club and he signed for the Blues because he was broken-hearted. And he has a right to do that as a footballer earning a living. He's still got to earn a living.
Doesn't mean I have to like him.
I know. But the second point around what he's done for New Zealand Rugby League, I just want to clear that up, okay? He has done more for the game in New Zealand than any other individual, and I'll tell you why. When he was 15 standing across the field and he was facing the haka, he knew he was in the wrong jersey. All right? That was 15 at an Australian schoolboys tournament. And Benji then went on to win a grand final and became the biggest name in the country, and he said to every kid, I want to play for my country. And that is why the New Zealand Rugby League have benefited and performed so well at the international level over the last 15 years. You can take the DNA of it and go right back to that day Benji Marshall was standing across from the haka and say, if he never done that, then all of our Kiwi players that were eligible to play Origin and for the Kangaroos would have had that choice to do that, and they wouldn't have been as strong. Benji's put a line in the sand. And he has been the biggest advocate for our kids in Australia, especially to represent their country, New Zealand. You can't ask him for any more than that while he's a player. You can't. So, you know, I think everyone needs to realise that. Why I say you need to recognise Benji Marshall, I've said this to the New Zealand Rugby League, give the guy a legend status. You know, don't wait till he's 60. He's actually done enough for the game in New Zealand now to be recognised. You know what I mean? Push it under the carpet. Sorry, we don't want to do that. But if Benji's going out, he needs to be held up on our shoulders and paraded around and said, thank you very much.
Can we parade him in Tauranga past Lavina's house?
I don't dislike Benji, but I just don't see the Warriors forking out $300,000 a year to keep him as an ambassador.
Which
it's
too
late now.
No, they won't.
Too late now for that.
Exactly. All right, can we move
10 years
forward?
ago.
Can we move forward to the point where you were talking, Lavina, about the women's program and being played here? Why not do it here?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I covered the women's, the NRLW last year, and it was the 4 teams in the competition. Quality rugby league, very, very impressed. And I know that the girls have to go over to Australia for this tournament in October. And there's only 4 teams in it, Roosters, Dragons, obviously the Warriors and the Broncos. It's highly competitive. It's great rugby league. It's at a time when the men's competition is complete. And I would think it would be a sensible decision to relocate those players here, form the bubble here, and give some rugby league fans a taste of good rugby league at home in New Zealand to see whether or not things will work out. I know logistically they're capable of doing it. They've got the grounds here. They can play all the matches. I mean, they're talking about doing double headers as it is anyway. They could play all the matches and give the fans a chance to, you know, give these women an opportunity to showcase what they're good at in front of their home crowd and let some of these Aussie players know what it's like to to maybe relocate themselves for a 6-week period. The coach of the Warriors can't even go over. They've got a new coach. I think it's Gary Donald, who was the coach of the Gillaroos, who will be coaching them throughout a 6-week period, because our coach here can't go over because he can't have that lockdown period. So move the women's competition over here as a nice little taster entree to see whether or not the men's competition can move over here next year, and see what rugby league fans think of it.
I would love to have it here. The only thing is that I know with working with Papakura now in the women's game in New Zealand, that a lot of those girls have pulled out of going over there because of their kids and their family, and that this is just one team. So to get three teams over here, I think we'd see the game lessen in quality, just because a lot of the girls wouldn't come over because of family, like they do have mums. Kids, being mums. So I'm with you, Lavina. I'd love the game over here. I just think that it would diminish in quality if a lot of those girls would pull out from Australia.
Look, I think what you're raising is a necessity to see really good football played here in New Zealand, because the Warriors have moved to Australia. Now, they do have competitions in the country, but it's an opportunity in it. We should be really promoting like national pathway competitions so that people actually get to see some football. Apart from the Auckland Rugby League doing that with the Fox, because that's our main competition in this country.
Get up,
There isn't any senior football of any substance going on around the country. The women's, Honey Hiramia down in the Waikato is doing a good job trying to get the women up and running. But in the context of what should be happening, what you're identifying is you're identifying a gap in our market. There is no rugby league, Lavina. You know what I mean? If we lose the Warriors, hey, whānau, have a look what we've got. We lose the Warriors, what are you going to go and do? Are you going to go and support the Fox? Are you going to go and get senior football in your country back up and running? Are we going to get Wahine tour back into the sport? What about high schools? You know what I mean? It brings a bigger question to the table. But what you're seeing right now is they leave town. What is he?
Yeah, I think this is a great chance for us to get into a post that you put up on Facebook. But before I do that, I reckon it's also a bad reflection of how we are as fathers. We just can't be trusted 100%. To get the kids out the door and fed properly while the ladies are playing rugby league, and that's a bad reflection on us.
I was going to make the same point as Ace. Fantastic, but unfortunately the mums have to look after the kids.
Because we're shit. That's because we're terrible, and we've all had that.
Can you imagine that coming home after 3 months? The wife comes home after 3 months. The kids will have a beard. They'll have a beard. They don't have a beard.
We've all had it
once in 3 months.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I bathed them. I bathed them back in February.
This has been thrust in our face during the lockdown. Just how terrible we are at doing the everyday things that our heroes, partners, get to do and do so well.
And they do, and they're the best people for that job too. They do a fantastic job.
So let's move into this post that you put up on your Facebook page, Tony, because it definitely has stirred. How many interviews have you? I can't get your ass off my screen. You're all over the screen where I'm watching stuff. Tell me what the post was about first. Break it down quickly so that we can all talk about it and how it's been since you put it up.
Look, I think the first point I'd like to make is that I've spent time in the game right across the spectrum. So I chair my club down in Taranaki, I chair the district, I've been chair of 2 zones, I've sat on the appointments panel at the NZRL, been the head of high performance, been the head of football and community, working with Jim Doyle, sat on the appointments panel for directors to go and sit on their board, and coach the Kiwis and coach the NRL. And so when I've finally thought, I'm going to sit on this, I'm going to write an open letter of my experience over the last sort of, let's say 10 years. Definitely 6 years, but let's say go back 10 years. And before I posted it was to make sure, is this the right thing that you want to do? Because you're going to throw a torch on some serious issues. But after sitting on it for a week, I've always not put myself in that, this is bigger than Tony Kemp, this is about our rugby league community. And I've always had the mantra that if you're going to do something in rugby league, if it's personal, then get out, because rugby league needs rugby league people for this game to survive. So I sent it out, I posted it. Now I expected that you'd shine a light on it. I didn't expect a torch to go to it and for it to blow up. And it has, it basically, The open letter articulated what everyone in this country was thinking, from the bottom of the South Island to the top of the North. At our club, I'll give you an example, and I'll post some photos of this on my Facebook page eventually, but the women's toilet, they haven't even got a seat. You know what I mean? The floor is dirty. We've had, rodents through it where our kids have to go and sit on the floors because there is no seats. You know what I mean? What I'm saying is that the drivers out of the main office are not going down to see what's really happening at grassroots, and therefore we've got all these problems as systemic across not only rugby league through society. It's been drilled down into the rugby league community, and enough is enough. The challenge around the Māori at the table. Now, I made a point. It's okay to have Māori on the board. That's fine. But it's totally different to have Māori representation at the table for the game.
Advisory.
You know what I mean? Like, just because you're Māori and you're sitting on a board doesn't mean you're advocating for Māori rugby league. Now, the thing with the sport that people don't realise is that it's 80% played by Māori outside of Auckland. Pacifica, across the Auckland area, you got rocks in your head if you don't know it's all Pacifica. So the letter was put out there to say, stop ignoring the game. Stop ignoring the game. People are saying things, they don't know how to say it properly, but when you're making decisions around these reviews, we talk about the Anderson review in 2008 where you said, take it or leave it, you're on your own. 2017, post David Kidwell, there's a lack of leadership. They pointed the torch on it again. This time they've just given it a new title called Strengthen and Adapt. Now, the strengthen and adapt part for me is, if you're going to strengthen it, get the right people at the table, New Zealand Māori Rugby League Pacifica, and the only people that need to adapt are New Zealand Rugby League and Sport New Zealand, because they're missing the point.
But this strength and adapt survey that's going through, it's not just New Zealand Rugby League who's a basket case and needs to be sorted out anymore, is it? This is something that other
That's right. There's 11 sports. Yeah. You know what I mean? But
so it's not like the others where they were doing a review of an organisation that was losing.
But hey, it looks like Anderson. It smells like Castle. I wrote it like that because you can give it whatever name you want. But it's looking at the organisation and it's reviewing the sport in the country. Yeah. That's why it's called Strengthen and Adapt. Now,
but it was selected. Can I just ask, was it selected? Was New Zealand Rugby League selected along with only
one of 11 sports?
One of 11 sports.
I think it's one of 11 sports. I might have that number.
No, I think it is 11, and I think that there was many sports that wanted to be reviewed because this is a chance where the governing side of it actually gets to have a help from the government. Like they can actually look at it and go, okay, here's how you can now improve. You guys are ticking the boxes in this thing, but here's how now you can improve. And they wanted to be a part of this review.
Well, the elephant in the room is money, isn't it?
Yes.
Let's not. Of course you want a review, mate, because there's a pool of money that's sitting there. We want our hands on it, and of course, if you want 11, you want as much as you can out of it. What I've taken on with that is like, if you're going to get money derived over a narrative at rugby league, it's really interesting because I've had people from other sports comment on the post. This is happening in this sport. Same thing's happening in our sport. Blah blah blah. If you got your hand out for money, don't use a narrative. And I've said this about. Don't say that we've got the community like no other. You know what I mean? When you don't actually understand what their community's dealing with. So give me, it's a lolly scramble, okay? But there's only one person at the lolly scramble, all right? There's no districts, there's no clubs, there's no New Zealand Māori Rugby League, there's no Pacifica all at the lolly scramble saying, where's our lollies? There's one organisation at the lolly scramble, they're taking all the money, and I try to paint that picture to say, enough's enough. If you're gonna use the narrative, then spread it out across the mutu. Start to actually
Tony,
do what you need to be doing.
let me ask you about the money side of things. Would I be correct in saying that let's talk money, let's talk figures, because a lot of people could understand that. In terms of an organisation, are we saying around about $7 million annually is injected into New Zealand Rugby League? Is that what you're saying? And only a small percentage of that is trickling or finding its way down to clubs outside of the Auckland arena. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, look, we've been asking for money. We're sitting on his own chair. We've been asking for money and more money into the zone so we can help our clubs out, our districts out, and so forth. So one of the exercises I did as Counties Manukau chair was I had the accountant that was sitting on our board that worked for Fisher and Paykel. Yep. So I'm like looking at numbers, and I said to him, Ian, can you sit down with me and let's go through this annual budget and have a look at what we're actually spending in the game. And he came back to me and said, well, over the last, he went over about 3 years, he said, well, it was 5%, was 4%, now it's under 3%. And to me, it's like, well, how can that be? Like the game, you're a national sporting office. Your remit is to look after the community game, but you're only giving it 3% directly as a cash injection. Now, you might have programs that are running around the peripheral that still aren't getting back into the community anyway, but you can't be using that as an excuse when the districts and the clubs are dying, and they're dying a horrible death. So when you're looking at figures, that's the key. You know, the key figure is 3% of an annual budget, whether it's 6 million, 7 million, 10 million,
Not
20
enough.
million, is not enough for the community. And the other part of that is that the corporate setup since 2008 with Sir John Anderson is not working for the game. You know, you've got, and I sent you guys a snapshot of that, you've got 7 directors and a CEO, or more than the 7 zones are getting directly as a cash incentive. Now, listen to this one. If you're the CEO, okay, if I was a board director and I'm looking at my CEO and I'm setting up the structure, because this is what needs to happen, it starts at the top of the board. And I'm looking at my CEO, the first question I would raise is, why am I paying you that amount of money to look after 40% of the game? Because what people don't realise is that 60% of our game resides in Auckland, and the Auckland Rugby League look after it.
Yeah.
So why would I be paying you a full salary to look after 40% of the game? By the way, you're doing a really bad job. Okay, so the context of the letter is to point out all these things that people are they sort of know that's going on. What I try to do is articulate it to say, hey, this is what I've seen throughout my time in rugby league and been a part of the New Zealand Rugby League and worked with their board and just called it out. I said, I've got to make this statement. Now, there's guys that have come on and they said, you know, but you were in there. Oh, of course I was in there. I know. That's why I'm making a comment. You know, it's all based on my history with the national body, but it's based on my history with the game.
Can I ask, when you say that New Zealand Rugby League doesn't look after Auckland Rugby League, so he's only so in NZRL are only looking after 40% of the game? Was your so do they go and get their own funding from the government then? So they're not
That's
on
right.
this 3%.
Well, they've got this wonderful investment tool called the Colour Park Heritage Trust.
Oh, right. So they've got their own funding,
but they also go
they
and get
still
their
come
own.
under the same rules.
They all go and get their own funding.
Right. So they all.
So not just the Auckland Rugby League, but the zones do too. They've got to go and get their own funding, mate.
But you're all governed by NZRL, right?
That's right.
Okay, so they are technically under the NZRL umbrella, so that's why someone like the CEO would actually technically be looking after it, even though they're going out and getting their own funding. Can I just ask also, the 3% that you're talking about that makes it down to grassroots, you're talking about cash payment, right? So
that's right.
Cash that you can go out and buy a toilet seat for the club, where you can go and do this and doing that. So technically, if New Zealand Rugby League is spending a lot of money on programs out in the community and trying to grow the game from how they see which is the best way of doing it, you would prefer them to stop spending the money on that and give that money to the clubs to then up the game in a different way.
So it's all about delivery model, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're talking delivery model. So, you know, again, the first thing you look at is the budget. So half of the budget's spent on salaries.
Cool.
Those salaries aren't delivering any programs whatsoever throughout the country.
So there are no programs, even though that's
there
what
are
they're
programs,
pointing.
but there's no significant take-up on any program throughout the country. So they expect a delivery mechanism to be pushed down through the zones who they give little funding for, and I'll explain this in a second, to go out and deliver a national strategy. Okay, so let's look at Mid Central, who I chair. All right, I've just resigned as their chair. They have one GM and one development officer. This person is expected to take care of Taranaki, Wanganui, Manawatu and Hawke's Bay.
They do programs and stuff, is that what you mean?
To deliver the national strategy.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not that the NZRL are flying people around the country and delivering programs left, right and centre. It's driven down from the top. What you've alluded to is a delivery model. The delivery model doesn't work. Budget-wise, why don't you take the budget and say how best to support this this delivery model? Because there's $4.5 million worth of delivery in this one budget.
Right.
So maybe don't have an office full of so many people doing next to nothing and support the game. Imagine if you threw $1 million at it.
Right, so you're saying, so I'm just trying to get my head around this. So if you're saying, if there was a way that they could create a business model that worked down through the country that actually helped the clubs improve and help the grassroots rugby game, rugby league, well, almost said rugby league game improve, that's where the money should be spent instead of making programs and then trying to drill it down from Auckland through the country and then only give 3% of the overall costs.
No, what I'm saying is that's your job.
Yeah.
That's your job. What you just described is their job.
Is come up with a working model.
Is what you just said. how you deliver that down through the game, that's your job. It ain't been done, mate.
Right. Okay. So that's
right.
really simple. From that post, you can say no matter because look, they've got people of culture on the board. They've got people around the game who are making the game work, who are Māori and Pacifica. So the idea that there's a whole lot of voices talking. If you then got them all into a lolly scramble to claim for the fundings, how fucking messy would that be? You need so the working model to make this work is you need to make sure that New Zealand Rugby League has a firm plan that everyone agrees to before it gets funded, and then the money filters down that way, right?
It's too. Well, mate, look, it's too hard, isn't it? When you think about it, it's too much work.
No. I just think a lolly scramble makes it messy.
I want to answer that question. It's too hard. It's too much work. Why would I pick up all this work when I'm getting paid so much for looking after 40% of the country? Why do I have to bring the right people to the table to listen to the hard conversations? Why don't I have Hone Harawira here, who has the best domestic senior competition in the country, all right, and runs it on his own? He doesn't affiliate with any rugby league up in the far north. Why don't I have New Zealand Māori Rugby League, John Devonshire, at the table, who runs and does their job for them? Why don't I have Pacifica like George Muliaga Brown from Samoa and the Tongans and the Niueans and the Cook Islanders at the table that are running Pacifica tournaments for their whānau on all of this on nothing. No handout whatsoever, okay? And then you look at an organisation, what I'm pointing out is you look at an organisation that's annual turnover is $6 to $7 million a year, but that money isn't going back to where they say it should be going. That's my point. Stop lying.
Right.
Stop lying. Stop saying you're looking after your community. Because
Right.
you simply aren't.
Because they're using a business model that you think isn't delivering on the things that is needed.
It's been driven. Maybe we should have a Pacifica Māori board for New Zealand Rugby League and invite in a Pākehā advisory group.
I see what you've done there. You've switched it round so that's how it would feel. I don't know. I think I want the best people in charge of the game, despite what skin colour they are. I want the best people making the best decisions so that rugby league gets going in as well. And if it means that because there's such a massive influence from Māori below the Bombay Hills and a massive influence from Pacifica, then if that's the best people for the jobs come from those areas, then so be it. I'm happy so long as the governance of the game works and
they will get offered workshops, which is the easiest way to deal with them. They'll get offered workshops, you can be a part of it, but you're not allowed to come and sit at the table. You know what I mean? We'll come and talk to you.
What is the table? What table
the
are you talking about?
table is a decision-making table, the board table. Okay,
Right.
So you have a gender diversity portfolio policy that's been pushed out by Sport New Zealand. So I agree with it. Get more women involved in the game. Women run rugby league around the country. You go to any club,
Totally.
you know what I mean? They run rugby league around the country, so it makes sense. But don't go and disrespect the treaty and say that you are supporting the Treaty of Waitangi and go a step ahead of that and go, well, we're going to invite gender diversity on our board before a seat for Māori at the board.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Do we have a Māori chairing the board?
That's my point. My point is, it's okay, they will have Māori representation, but it isn't a direct benefit to the Māori.
Just to put it into a bit of context here in the Bay of Plenty, there are a couple of people running the Automoto Eels stand and also over at the Mount, and two of them are very heavily involved in the community here in Tauranga and at Mount Maunganui. And it's because of them that they've got a strong fraternity of rugby league players of all ages coming through. And it's not just about playing rugby league, it's about getting whānau together, about supporting the community and being involved. And because of these two men, rugby league is strong in this region. But if you could give these two guys an extra $150,000 each a year, rather than make them volunteers, they could turn that money into making the membership of both of those clubs tenfold in numbers. Honestly, they could. So what Tony's talking about is maybe the execs at the table need to sort of say, time we took a pay cut, time we got involved in the community, see what's happening at grassroots. Let's go to Tauranga, let's go to Mount Maunganui. Let's see what's working. Let's give them extra funds because what they're doing is right, but they need more money to put back into the community to get more players so the game of rugby league grows not just now, but next year, 5 years later, and 10 years later. They would love to see some of that money and they would get so many more players here rather than having all those kids turn to the dark side and that other sport. What's it called, Mark? What is it
Rugby
called?
union. I can't believe you don't have enough space in your body to enjoy both. Anyways, can I just say, round of applause for Kempe though, because if anything, I think the
We'll make
post
the
has,
puppy.
the entire post has obviously got this conversation going, and it would probably make people at NZRL a little nervous, and they're probably thinking, but you know what? Fuck, that's where we've got to be if we want the game to grow and we want things to change and we want the best out of the rugby league game. I hope that out of this we've solved the problems and that things will change, and that I'm just glad that. We've had a chance to hear from you.
You know what I mean? Like I said, the main thing here is that it's articulated a conversation on people's minds, and it's got it out there. And it's great to have a profile and able to share it, because the media have gone crazy on it. You know, they're talking about doing a documentary about it. I was speaking to a guy from a television network last night. It is that important to our community. Because I've explained it that the rugby league is the Māori of this country's national sport. It is not rugby union. All right? And why I say that is because it's not about just what happens on the football field. It's right throughout clubland and how whānau come together and our kaumātua sit on the sidelines, and it's a home away from their marae. So, and you're taking that into the context is that all I've done is said what everyone else is thinking. You know, we've been doing. You know, they're not saying, "Hey, man, this is a real surprise." They're all gone. Well, thanks a lot, man. That's exactly what we're thinking.
Yeah, what you've done in your post is you've actually put some numbers to it. You've also put some strong opinion to it. I think a lot of people can read it and go, "Yeah, man, it's true. We turn up to some pretty dodgy-looking club rooms." I know, and no offence to anyone at the Ellerslie Eagles, because it's a lovely club rooms, but it's a shithole. Like compared to some of the, you look at that compared to say. What's the Remuera Rugby Club? What's that called? Where they have the college rifles?
Rifles.
College rifles is like awesome. Perfect looking, shiny gyms. It's got the fields are all
my old
astroturf.
CTE's kicking in here every time you bring something up. I'll give you a prime example. All right, this is my club in Taranaki.
I love the Ellerslie Eagles, by the way.
Yep, and they're great. Ellerslie Eagles are a great club. They've got some Kurt Sorensen, they're good legends going through that club. Dylan Napper's old man was an Ellerslie Eagle.
And they could do better with the club rooms. I mean, it looks shit.
But here's an example. In Taranaki, my club, all right, has been situated on Clifton Park for 86 years. It's the 86th year this year. Over the past 6 years, they've built a $5 million sports hub around it. Around it. So it's there, but they've built brand new netball courts with covered roofing, a brand new gymnastics court with all these new security cameras on the outside right next to our club. Our club, the air conditioning
Pointed
unit,
at your
the
club.
air conditioning unit from 1970s fallen off the wall, and an admin block. You know what I mean? Not a cent has been spent on my club.
Now, those clubs, and sorry, because this is dragging on now, and I know you've got to go soon, Aish, so we need to get through this, but is this because those other organisations have gone out and got good funding from the government, or they've done their own sausage sizzles and stuff like that? What has the club done for itself in that sense, and are they just standing there waiting for a handout?
I just think they personally, my personal opinion is I think they take advantage of the rugby league community.
Right.
They know things that the rugby league community don't know, and they don't like... They don't like mixing and mingle with them. You know, my kids put their heads inside the gymnast club and were told to get away. You know, why? Because they've got a bit of hooper coming out of their nose and they're dirty. You know what I mean? It's wrong, and I'm calling it out. You know, what should happen is that this is a societal issue. Rugby league's right at the heart of it, and the government need to step up here. It's not the NZRL we're calling out. We're calling out the government. Come on. It's time to step up.
Love it, Kempy. Good passion, great love. We have to bring it into this podcast. Can I just say, Sunday, 6 p.m, the mighty Vodafone Warriors taking on the, what can we call them, seeing as they're not allowing us to use their players, the dumb Eels. Get up the boys. I'm calling that as game of the round, or I think the Knights and the Sharks is a very important one.
Play the Raiders?
Yeah, that one is as well.
Yeah, Roosters, Raiders, but that...
Sunny Bill.
All the results went their way too, mate. If Cronulla lost, they're just about in the 8, you know. But every other result went their way. They jumped 3 teams, the Warriors, and they're now in with a chance. So
and we get to
let's
play
ride
the
them home.
Sharks. We get to play the Sharks.
We get to play the Sharks.
Like that,
what
so
we would like to see is the Knights put a big dent in their hopes. We bump up over the Eels. It's all go.
The Knights are done. They're gone.
They're gone. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
We are done. We are gone. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you.